how important is artwork and or imagery, like artists to your D&D games?
It's only as important as it is to each player, because the only time it really is important is it's not. I'm like, that's as far as I can go. It's great to have, and I love it, and it's beautiful. And if you want to share your character, it can be an amazing thing to do. But I've played D&D with pennies on a coffee table, and that's still a fun and amazing experience. That being said, I grew up on the advanced Dungeons and Dragons monster manual, and like that just pulled me into the game so much, and like all of the Tolkien-esque art that has been out there, and like even Jim Henson's art like draws me into that fantasy world of wanting to play D&D. But then once you're in the game, it's between you and your players. So at the end of the day, it's not important to play and to have it, but it's so nice to have. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, and I hope I can continue doing D&D art, creating people's characters for years to come. But is it important? No, I don't think so. Not important to play the game.
Art can be a lot of things, right? For some people it's minis, for some people it's commissioned artwork of their character, other people it's battle maps or world maps. It can mean a lot of things to different people, and there's so much going into it. I've heard some people going away from art, talking about descriptions, like the describe.com. They do a lot of sponsorships. Most people have heard of them now. And I did a quick review of them, and someone really took issue. They were like, this is a crutch. DM should learn to describe things. And I'm like, we put a lot of pressure on DMs. Sometimes it's nice to just put some artwork up for people and be like, this is what you see. I mean, it's good to hone all your craft and stuff, but just because I'm all for like not taxing the DM more than is beyond their skill set sooner than they're ready to like take it full on, but I also love finding art for my characters and doing some Photoshop to be like, oh, this is the closest thing I found. If I'm not commissioning art or something, this is close to it. I'll just do some Photoshop and make it my own, that sort of thing. I think that's a lot of fun, and it helps you picture your character. Not crucial to the game. I've also played, with pennies on the coffee table, like you said. I've done poker chips, knockoff Pokemon figurines that are all like miscolored from China. There's all kinds of things you
Those
can
are the
do.
best.
Yeah.
When I first started playing D&D, we didn't have any art. Like, it was full theater of the mind. We're playing in person, all that stuff. It was great. Perfectly fine. Worked with me. But as I sort of, pandemic and everything started happening, and then I just started DMing more, I realized what my strengths and weaknesses were, and descriptions were one of them. So that's when I started bringing in, okay, if I suck at describing some environments, let's bring a map. Let's bring some art in to help describe that. Now, art is it necessary, like, to run the game, like Rook said? No, but if it's good for your table, if it fits for your table, then by all means go for it. So it's extremely important for me. As a person who kind of has ADHD, I have a little bit of trouble like paying attention to every sort of thing and figuring out like what the heck is going on at the scene. So for like playing online, there's lots of distractions. Some person may describe as like, wait, what's going on? I really like, I'm trying to be invested into the game, but it's just my brain going every which way, right? So it is important to have a little bit of that artwork for me. And especially from what I've seen with my players, they really, really do appreciate that. So if anything sort of happens, they get distracted, boom, they look on the screen, boom, 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 this is where my character is, this is what or the character that I'm talking to looks like, I'm back in the game. It takes 2 seconds to do it, right? And that's very, very important on a sort of Twitch side or streaming sort of thing, where people are joining into the session like 2 hours and they have no idea who your character is. They have no idea what they look like and whatever. So jumping in, getting that little quick understanding within 10 seconds, it's very, very important on the Twitch side of things for me, but not necessarily for everybody.
Streaming is a whole nother game. But even since I had to start playing online, man, a lot of people I play with don't have good cameras or like good enough internet to like play the game and have a camera on. So art is a great way to throw focus, because everyone playing online on their computers, it's so easy to go to Facebook or or whatever, like, or just your mind start wandering because you're not in person. Sometimes artwork is a great way to kind of throw focus on what's going on, or like some NPC you're talking to. It can be really useful.
I've played more D&D online than I have in person, depending on what you're talking about. Like art in the traditional sense should, I mean, if you use it, great. That's awesome. You could use it to kind of like give an idea or set a mood, so I'll try to use it for like, we're doing something in the Underdark. Well, cool. Here's kind of like the visual, kind of just so you get the idea. But you shouldn't need it, theater of the mind, except for fighting. With fighting, I have like so I have some frontal lobe damage, and so my object permanence is like shot to hell. And so if you just try to explain to me, oh yeah, you're kind of over here, is done. You know, something like OSRs where movement doesn't matter. Cool, fine, but I need to have some sort of battle map at the least. And I don't, we use my buddy and I, we're both dads, so we use our kids' toys uh as markers on there and stuff like that. So that's fine. But I do need, if you counting that as part of art. But I've never like commissioned anything. I'm terrible at art, so I've never been able to draw my own stuff up. So it's cool. It's like an addition thing, a help thing. I don't think it's a crutch. And I think it's fun for people. People get really invested. You spend 4 years on a campaign, you get invested in that crew and stuff like that. I think that's awesome. People like Rook be able to whip you up what your party looks like and stuff. The only thing I've ever done is I did get this guy from Hero Forge, who is my gnome barbarian who pretends he's a dwarf.
Yeah, I got Hero Forge made a great present from my brother. He made a gnome character for his first character named Jerome the Gnome. And so I surprised him with that Hero Forge for Christmas one year. Yeah, I like how you point out some people have circumstances in their lives where it's like visual aids are really helpful. It's not just like their preference,
I have a couple schools of thought kind of floating around in my head on this one. Me personally, I love theater of the mind. That's my favorite part of the game. I'm super inspired by like War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and radio theater is a lot of fun for me to listen to and to enact. But it can get a little weird. There's so many unique things in Dungeons and Dragons that you want to personify through a description, like a really good one. But some things are kind of hard to nail down. Like I don't think a flump really comes across the way you need it to sometimes without the image. If you want to go with that description, obviously you can always tweak your monsters to have them have a specific look or anything like that. I try to do descriptions like that, but I love having an art reference to look at. If I'm having trouble describing something, I got my monster manual right there. I can crack it open to the page of the monster I'm referencing, look at it and describe it to my players. And that will help me personally as a dungeon master a lot, give them that immersive experience. And then if anyone is like, hey, what do you guys think? Do you want to see it? And then we'll metagame like that a little bit. Like, here's what it looks like. Let me just cover the stat block and you can have a look. At times I don't necessarily need that sort of thing. I know a lot of people, there's a big need for battle maps in certain situations, but when you're doing like from a radio drama perspective, when you're doing like an actual play podcast or something like that, and you might not be sharing a battle map or anything, and you kind of let the movement go out the window a little bit, like how we were talking about earlier. The place I really like art and commissioning art is for character, OPCs and character designs. I think that's really great to be able to describe your character to an artist and have them work with you to get it exactly the way you want. I think really gets the players into their character. For building an actual play podcast, that was a huge part of not only like giving the audience a reference point to what my character looks like, but also really helping me get into character and helping me visually imagine exactly down to the detail, like what this person is wearing, what they're carrying, their facial expressions to some degree. Usually you're going to commission a still, so you're going to see that one facial expression, but it's going to be the one that you talked about. So I think it's super important. I love working with artists on getting character designs done. It's so much fun to see it come to life, this thing I imagined in my head, and to work with somebody and to know that it's going to be represented accurately. It's really, really cool. So for describing a place, it's like, oh yeah, you're on the top of a mountain, the breeze is flowing and the trees are tall and green, like, here's my inspiration photo. Like, that can be really cool. And I don't really see it as a crutch. If you need to do that sort of stuff to help immerse your players in the world, and it's important for you to bridge that gap and have your players understand what you mean, throw an image up there. That's totally fine. There's so many different styles. I see no problem with having art, not having art. I agree, it's not necessary, but it's really cool to have. It's super awesome.
There's also a caution there, right? When you use art, I've put art up for players before when I'm DMing. It was like, close enough, this is the NPC, and they're like, does she really have a metal arm? And I look closer, I'm like, oh, she has a metal arm? No, ignore that. So there, got to be careful of that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's funny you say that. That's a perfect segue. I was thinking exactly that. I think that art as reference can be good, But if in this case, but if you use it, unless you use it all the time, the players are going to latch on to the fact that all of a sudden you're showing them a picture. And why are you showing them a picture? What is it in this picture that they need to see? So unless you do it all the time for NPCs, I would personally never do it. But going back to the question, I use it for inspiration. I love flipping through like a monster manual or looking online, but I don't like to show the players art, especially of monsters, because I am a big reader. I love to read short stories. I love to read fantasy fiction. And if I sit down with somebody who read the same story as me and we both start talking about the same monster, we would describe it differently. And I like that. I like that your mind is going to do something different. Now, the only time that's important is, let's say the monster has one special spot where you're supposed to shoot it with an arrow to kill it. If you have that kind of trope, yeah, a picture's good so everybody can see, oh, look, that dragon has a missing scale. But otherwise, I don't like it for that. I like it as inspiration, but during play, I almost never show art unless it's just so awesome in the adventure. I have to show the players. I'm like, look at how cool this is, and I just show it to them because I'm excited about it. So, but I never want to pick up a pre-written adventure that doesn't have any art in it, because I love it as a dungeon master to read through it and see it and get inspired as to what the person who created the adventure was thinking. What's their feel, right? It helps me describe it, but I try not to describe it based on the pictures. I just get a feeling in me, and I describe it based on what I think my players would enjoy. I guess if that makes sense. So it's kind of important, but not important during play. Maybe more for prep for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you reminded me of one of my thoughts with this is I once took a survey from Wizards of the Coast where they were asking how important, when they release like a new subclass in a book, how important is art for that thing? And I said, actually, it's pretty important. I think I really like seeing artwork in a new book. And like I've been helping Indestructo Boy. He's doing his new alchemist class that he's going to put up on the DM's Guild soon, and he commissioned art for it, and it looks amazing. But like putting in artwork of inspiration, like this is what you're reading about, really gets people excited and into it, and like it helps them get into the fantasy of what you're trying to mechanically describe.
Well, I'm just going to give it from my perspective rather than in general terms. I think that's the easiest way. When I first encountered Dungeons and Dragons, I was really into fantasy well before that. So I had some friends sitting around and they were talking about this game where you roll these funny looking dice. They talked about Dungeons and Dragons and they described it to me and they said, you'd be right into this. And I said, go away, sounds like garbage to me. What got me into Dungeons and Dragons was finding some miniatures, some pewter miniatures in a bookstore. I'd never seen anything like it before. I'm in New Zealand. I'm not in North America, so it was a novelty to actually find that. It wasn't until I went to university that I actually found books on Dungeons and Dragons. And what sold me was the art. When I picked up Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition and tried to read through it and understand it, no. But the art, that was really impressive. And so for me, art's actually really important. I'm not, in terms of a player, in terms of depicting the character I'm playing, it's not that important to me. I actually don't see a lot of importance to me personally. But then I don't stream games. I'm just like a normal Joe. If I'm dungeon mastering though, for me it's like super important. And the things that I really want to depict. But again, I like theatre of the mind. It's too hard to run theatre of the mind combat, or too hard to present something descriptively, as a few people have described already. Like the flump, Brian, I totally get. I understand that. Like, how do you describe a fart monster? It's pretty difficult. I like going theatre of the mind, and then often they'll say, like, can we see a picture? And I'm like, sure, because I will have a picture. Because I will have made sure there is a picture. Unless, of course, I ran out of time. And sometimes I do. And the things I like are pictures of locations. But most of all, it's the monsters. It's always been the monsters for me. I actually like NPCs. And it's funny that you were talking about the NPC, Jordan, that has the metal arm. Because see, for me, what I do with my NPCs is I'll find a picture and I'm like, oh, I really like that. It looks like a really interesting character. What does that tell me from that picture? And I'll write the character based on the picture. So I don't have to worry about them having the metal arm when it's not supposed to have a metal arm, because actually I will just write that in. That's part of my process. I always felt like an image tells 1,000 words. You hear this saying thrown around, and it does. It tells so much. It tells you about the emotions of the monster and the creature. I'm not a huge fan of 5e monster art, but I do feel like the 5e monster manual has some pretty good art considering it's watercolor. Watercolor's never been my favorite, but it's actually not that bad. The rest of the art, it's not so great, so I don't get attached to it very much. I actually find myself much more drawn to some of the Magic the Gathering stuff which I know sounds strange. I'm still far more drawn to the older artwork going right back. And I'm not talking about the original monsters drawn black and white and pen and pencil when they were trying to figure out what these things were supposed to look like because nobody had ever drawn it before. Do you know what I mean? There was a very different feel to it. I even use probably more Pathfinder, Magic the Gathering, and older art than I do Wizards of the Coast stuff. For me, and I still don't understand why they do this, because what I want something that kind of, it's a fantasy world, but how real can you make that look to me? So I believe that exists. I feel like a lot of the early artists that they had were really good at what they did, and they produced some very nice pieces. They always sort of took me right there. I'm always going to go with the description first, and then the art is there as the backup, particularly since it helps me sort of put it all together.
I love a good description, then artwork combo, because it's like the imagination's running wild, and here it is, and it all comes together, and that's a lot of fun. Kind of going back to the modules and stuff. You know what module has some of the best artwork I've ever seen is Rime of the Frost Maiden. The artwork, top notch. I love it. The module itself, probably like a 2-3 out of 5 for like narrative cohesion, but like artwork, 5 out of 5. Artwork can make a huge difference for perception of a module, and if you have artwork in a module, like I recommend sharing those with players if you got a really good one, because there's some really great stuff in there.
The art can make such a big difference in the module books. Like, I'm 90% of why I'm buying the new Citadel one,
Radiant Citadel, right?
Radiant Citadel, is because the art looks so amazing in that book. Every single thing I've seen from that book just looks fantastic. And then I'm actually writing a setting book now, but I'm waiting till I can afford to actually hire people to do the art for it and stuff before I even come out with it. Because for me, it's not worth coming out with a book like that unless you can have art for that and that. And then art sets such a setting. Like I was kind of showing off. This is Morkborg. Mm-hmm. And the art is such gives you such a vibe for like what this game is like. It's just heavy metal, Swedish death metal stuff.
Aesthetic is huge for people.
Just to clarify kind of what I was going with, the question was how important is it to your game? And to me, that's why art just isn't important to playing the game, because I think D&D is what everyone said. Like, it's perfect. You can describe things, and I think it's a great addition. And minis, I love minis so much. But to D&D as a whole, I think everyone's right. Everyone's right on the money. Like, art is so important to the culture of it because it's how we express it. It doesn't have to just be character art or mini painting. It can also be people writing music for D&D. It can also be people bringing items, objects to the table for games, which has been amazing. And I love people that, like, when they make a puzzle, they bring you a puzzle. Like, that's amazing artwork that the D&D community is just always blowing my mind with the amazing things they come up with. So is it important to play the game? No, you don't need it. But it's the passionate love part of D&D. People bringing their writing skills, they're bringing their artistic skills, their painting skills, and that is kind of what makes me love D&D, and especially just any tabletop game. Like, is people bringing their creativity together. I definitely don't want to make it sound like you don't need art. Art's terrible. Like, that's not the case, but it's definitely something I see a lot of people come to D&D and they think like, oh, well, if I can't pay for a high-end commission for my character, then I'm not playing D&D right, or I feel bad because I can't get my character commissioned. Draw it yourself. Make it out of macaroni if that's what you have, because it should be a labor of love. And if you have the money and the potential to hire somebody because you want a high fidelity picture, that's great. That's a perfect way to express your character, especially to other people, because that's all art is doing, is it's sharing something that you love, created, or just really have a passion about with people. All those books you have in the back, Brian, they all are amazing. And just being able to show those off, like, that could get someone inspired to play D&D. And that's absolutely what happened to me with the monster manuals back in the day. It's like, I don't even want to play D&D. I just want to look at all these books. And that's why I buy books today. Like, that's it. It's just the art always gets me. So any type of expression is great. And so art is very important to D&D as a culture, but don't feel beholden to having to do that to play D&D and have fun with your friends.
I did a Photoshop of like my party when I was playing, and I find some art that like kind of fits them, and one of them, like, the art was holding something, so I changed it to like an apple, and they were like, why is it an apple? And I was like, I don't know, I had to have you holding something, so I went with an apple. But if you go on Reddit and it like makes you tag your art, if you're like proud of it and you're like, oh, this is art I made of my character or our party, and it makes you like tag it, don't put original content if you photoshopped it, even if it's like obviously photoshopped, because people will swarm you and you will be sad about your art. And so be careful on Reddit is all I have to say.
Yeah, that's a no-no. One other thing I did forget to add is on that note, all of the artwork I do on my channel, most of the stuff I do on my channel, I post it on ArtStation, or I have it in the Discord. If people want to use that for their home games, they're more than welcome to, especially all of the YouTube creators here. If you want to use that for your thumbnails or in your videos, just credit me in it, and that's what it's there for. It's very much there so people can enhance their games. So
yeah, that's what I've learned. Is
and let me know.
Use it in a thumbnail and say I
Thank
made
you.
it.
Well, that's the thing I don't want. Don't say you made it. I want you to tell people I made it.
Yeah, for sure. My Photoshop was like Idris Alba from like Thor, so I thought it was like obvious. Like I didn't make it. Like I just kind of photoshopped like some goggles on him, like Digimon or something. But people
Yeah,
just
that
hit
OC,
me up.
that's-
They were
that's
like, "This is
important.
literally Idris Alba," and I'm like, "I know. Come on." I said it's.
You
Photoshop.
have to tag it with Photo Bash. That's what you have to do. You have to tag it with
Okay,
Photo Bash.
I don't think that was an option. I tried so hard and I just got lit up. Artists love to be credited, and they're often very generous with not policing who uses their stuff, especially just to do their home game. It's not like you're making money off of it. Just give them some credit. They love that, Everyone likes.
I love it when people have used my art for their character sheets. Like that's really cool. They're just like, oh, I love that Gripply you drew. Can I use that for my character? It's like I would love to see what your character does with that imagery. Like I'm glad that inspired you to make a character. It's great. Now people put it on a shirt and sell it. I'm gonna get a little mad.
Yeah,
but
of course.
it's like I love to spread the artwork I have.
Well, thank you everyone for the discussion. Art, fantastic part of D&D culture. Let's all enjoy it, use it responsibly, give credit and all that stuff. And have a great adventure this weekend. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.